Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne here, joined with my sister Connie Blackwood. And this month we want to talk about self-care and how it impacts our mental health, our physical health, and even our spiritual health. And we don't always realize how they're connected or how they're wired together. And so that's really going to be our focus for this next month. And today specifically, I just want to share more of my story of how, I journeyed through burnout and how when we are not aware of some of the things that lead to that, it is literally a slippery slope, and you could actually be going down that pathway without even realizing it. So Connie, welcome to this conversation.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, when we talked about this, I was thinking about, okay, well, we've talked about self-care before, but we always came at it from like, how do we care for our bodies? And, you know, in some ways, I feel like by expanding it to like what we need to do to care for ourselves mentally and how to care for ourselves spiritually, I think we need to have that holistic approach in order for us to feel like we're actually caring for ourselves the right way. Because if you only have one or two aspects of self-care, you're still missing some components that you need. Because we are body, soul, and spirit. You need all three.
Yeah, for sure. And I found that to be so true in my healing journey. And I didn't realize how significant that played into my story, right? We grew up in such a stressful home, so much chaos, so much anxiety, right? It was like this heightened state of being in for so long where you develop, belief patterns based on your experience, right? You have these problems that rise up and they're hard to deal with. Maybe sometimes you don't have the skill set to deal with them, right? It contributes to your mental health in regards to, like, I think about, some of the things I thought as a child, right? Like I thought I was responsible for everyone's happiness, right? And that was developed in me because of an experience I had, right? And where I interpreted someone's behavior, someone's words as my responsibility. And we develop these mindsets that really do not serve us. They cause us so much harm and grief. And one of mine was perfectionism, right? Thinking that I had to be everything and do everything for everyone and be perfect all the time. And it led to a chronic life of stress for me personally, which did a number on my health, right? So, like, let's start this conversation by talking about, like, how do our emotions and our thoughts, like, impact our bodies in such a negative way? Like, have you experienced this, Connie, in any way?
Yeah, but it like I think for me, when I look back, it's more like I start thinking negatively and then I just don't do things, right? Like I don't
Mhm.
have the motivation to keep going because I'll tell myself, oh, I'm gonna fail, or I tell myself, oh, I'm not good enough. Like those are my old things that would come to me. And so I just found myself just not moving forward, not doing anything about any of my dreams or anything. And so for me, it was changing those thought patterns to, well, I am good enough and I am talented enough and I can do these things. And, with God's help, I won't fail, right? I just have to keep trying. And the, definition of failure is to quit, right? So if I keep
Mhm.
trying, I will eventually succeed. Then you think about how many inventors it took thousands, sometimes tries, before they got their invention exactly the way they wanted it and where it was working perfectly. And so, just don't quit, keep going, and you'll eventually get there. But don't let each setback actually take a toll on you because it does affect you physically. Like it actually would make me withdraw. It would make me shut down. And a
Mhm.
lot of times that, like, also fit into actually caring for myself physically, because then I just didn't have the energy, right? And
Right.
so, and even then, rest wasn't necessarily rest. It was just like being withdrawn and isolated, which isn't necessarily rest, you know?
Yeah, and I find when we do that, when we just kind of retreat and get in within ourselves, right? We almost consume our time with things that will distract, right? It's like
Hmm.
a mechanism for us not to face what we're dealing with, not to go into the storm head on, right? And I find for myself, like I would engage in things that were non-productive, that would actually, either hide my anxiety for a time. It wouldn't deal with it. It would just like mask it for a while. And, you do these mind numbing activities, whether it's like watching TV, like binge watching, or, you know, doing things that absolutely are not going to move you forward, even like things like drinking, drugs, those addictive behaviors. We do it to numb ourselves from the thoughts that we're having, the beliefs that we have about our ability to cope or ability to perform in those situations, but it's not helping us. It's actually hindering us, and it's actually making things much worse, right? And for me, like I engaged in a lot of those unhealthy behaviors. One of mine particularly was in the area of food, right? To try to minimize and manage the emotions I was having, I would overconsume on comfort foods, on things that would help distract me from how I was feeling, right? And, for me, the major one was sugar. And not many people know this about me. So those of you that have been following us and you're listening in, this might be new to you, but I had an addiction to sugar and I had so much social anxiety being in public places with people. Those sugar packets that are on the tables. I actually would just consume those one after another, almost like a sugar shooter or a sugar shot, just to like try to calm my nerves and be able to be present in the moment. But what I didn't realize what that was doing inside my body. It was creating so much havoc, so much um, damage to my body systems, to my body's ability to cope and handle stress. And I remember even when I was pregnant with my first son, like I was having 2 Slurpees a day, and when I think about that, that was like 23 years ago. It wasn't until my son was about 1 or 2 that I realized I got to get this under control. And I started making some serious changes um, so that I didn't go that route. Like I started finding new ways to manage the things I was thinking, the things I was feeling, the stresses I was under. And but when you're in the thick of it, like we all do this. We all find ways of coping and they're not healthy and they're not helping. And in fact, they're making it much worse. And so this is why the topic of self-care, I believe, is so important. Like we need to start taking care of ourselves. And what does that look like? How does it look like to take care of ourselves emotionally, physically, in our bodies, and even our spiritual health, right? And so as we explore this more this month, like I'm excited to share a lot more of my experience. I write all of my story in my latest book, my last book called Finally Free. It's really my testimony of how God showed me how everything I was experiencing was all connected, body, soul, and spirit or mind. And, it's all connected. And when one part is suffering, it impacts all of them. And we have to be more holistically minded when we want to restore ourselves or come into a state of healing, because they're not just separate parts. They're all connected and they all influence one another.
Yeah, I think for one thing, like limiting your stress is a good one. Like
Hmm.
limiting how much your interaction with stress is. But there's stressors in our lives that we can't like avoid, but the ones that we can, right? So instead of putting off things, doing them right away helps relieve that stress. I think sometimes we just get so in the mode of oh, this can be done tomorrow or this can be done next week, that we don't realize we're adding to our stress, right?
Hmm.
And for me, that's one of the big ones. Like I have to do things in the moment, especially if I have the time, just do it and get it done, right?
Yeah. And I think self-care, I mean, we've talked about this before, but self-care plays a huge role in this because that was a significant part of my slippery slope, right? I wasn't taking care of myself.
Mhm.
Like my needs became the last priority, like even eating properly, sleeping properly, getting exercise. Like we don't realize how important these are in our mental health. Um, we just think, "Oh, well, yeah, that would help my body," but we don't recognize the correlation with our body health and our mental health, and it is so connected, and I found out that the hard way, and my goal is that, through the stories that we share, through our experiences that, maybe we can help someone else not go down that same path, not get to the point where they're so burnt out they really can't do anything, and that's really what I was faced with. I got so depleted in all areas of my life that I literally couldn't take care of my family, let alone myself. And that was a scary place to be. But it was also a illuminating time where I realized I got to take this seriously or else, there's no there's no way out for me, right? I would have been
Mhm.
hospitalized. I would have who knows if I would have even made it out of that season. And so I'm so thankful for you, Connie, for coming in my life at that time and providing for me a safe place to do that work, to start taking serious look at how am I caring for myself and how is this going to help me in my health and in my whole holistic wellness, right?
And it was nice to be there for you. And I think we need to do that more often. We need to reach out to others and ask for help. And I think that's one another area we lack in a lot of times when we're going through these stressful situations. We don't want to let other people in. We don't want to let them know that we're struggling. But if we don't ask people for help, they don't know we need it. And once
Yeah.
they know we need it, then that gives them the opportunity to be able to help. And sometimes we're sitting there wondering why no one's willing to help us, but nobody knows what's going on. So nobody
Yeah.
knows they need to. And so sometimes we just need to actually open it up and say, even if it's just one trusted person, say what's going on and let them have the opportunity to jump in and help. Because if we try to do it alone, we're going to stay stuck a lot of the time because we don't have the assistance to get us out.
Yeah, and they too, even if they can't directly help us, they'll have the clarity of mind to be able to like, "Oh, I know a resource that will help," or
Hmm.
"I know these other people that could really support you in this area." So even if they can't directly be part of the solution for you, they can help you find those solutions, and they can also support you along the way. That honestly was one of the pinnacle things in my journey. Your help, your husband's help, the instruction from my counselor, really helping me dig deep and figure out a lot of those internal struggles I was dealing with and being able to look at it more rationally, right? Like if we're trying to deal with our emotions and our thoughts and our belief patterns and our mindsets on our own, it's hard for us to shift those on our own. We
Hmm.
need somebody from the outside to be able to say, "Have you considered this? Have you looked at it from this perspective? Can't you see the positives that are coming out of this?" Right? Like we need that outside support, that outside influence to help shift our mindsets in those areas.
And sometimes I think even allowing God to speak into those areas, like I've been struggling with being sick this week. And so mentally, I was like frustrated and really annoyed because there's important things I wanted to get done this week. And yesterday, I opened my Bible and it fell open to Proverbs 30. And the first verse is talking about being weary And I was like,
Mm.
I just came out of a time of rest. I shouldn't be weary. Like, this is so frustrating, but this is exactly how I feel. And it was just interesting because the Lord was like, well, that's because your body is weary. Your mind isn't. So do things with your mind. Like, you don't have to force your body to do things it can't, but your mind and your spirit can keep going and different, like, and not let this bog you down. And I had a great time with God because of that. And I realized that just because my body's holding me back doesn't mean I have to allow it to impact my mind or my heart or any other part of me. I can, you know, do some of the things I wanted to do,
Mhm.
just not the physical things necessarily.
Yeah. Well, and that ties into, what we were talking about before. Like a lot of times we will distract ourselves and just do nothing, right?
Hmm.
But I find that even if I can't do the thing that I want to, if I'm at least moving forward and doing something productive, then I'm still moving forward and it still helps increase my level of confidence, my like I don't fall into some of those other traps, right? Because I'm still, moving forward. I'm still doing things that are productive and helping keep my mental health the way that I think in a positive direction instead of, going into that negative vortex, which is
Hmm.
hard to get out of once you're in it.
For sure. Plus, if you stay in that mode, then it actually makes you feel worse, right? Like if I stayed in that mode, I would feel worse, right? Because then I'm not, engaging with God. I'm not engaging mentally with anything. I'm just vegging the whole time, and I'm just like, when will this ever be over? And it just makes me feel worse. And it's this vicious cycle, right? I find that that really helped me to be able to at least function and like, you know, actually have a good day yesterday,
Hmm.
which is great.
So as we close here, like Connie, what are some um, signs that you've experienced or that you've seen in others that, would help us realize that we're actually, going down the path to like burnout and emotional drainage and not handling our, experiences or the stresses in life well? Like, what would be some of those signs that you would see or that you've experienced that people can watch out for and be like, okay, I need to really take care of this quickly and not just, ignore this?
Escaping. So whether it be through distractions or whether it be through binge watching Netflix or being on your phone or whatever it is for you, whether it's video games, who knows? Like there's a million things, or addictions, or whatever you're going to run from what you're actually dealing with. That is a sure sign that you're going the wrong direction because the sooner you face it, the quicker it's over. And then you're not having that stress hang over you because not only are you then having the stress of the situation still hanging over you with this little bit of relief from your distraction, but then if your distraction becomes an addiction, and then you have another problem you have to deal with on top of the original problem, and it just
Yeah.
adds more and more stress. And the longer you leave it, the worse it can get, right? Like, especially if it's a financial issue, right? The longer you leave it, well, it's not going to get better. It's going to cost you more and more the longer you leave it. So
Right.
it's the same way whether it's an emotional issue or something else. The longer you leave something, the worse it is when you actually get to it. So it's better just to head things on straight away and deal with them,
Hmm.
as difficult as it may be. And like I said, don't do it alone. Get some help.
Yeah, I think another one of the signs that I recognize in myself and in others is, avoiding looking for support, right? Like
Hmm.
avoiding connecting or sharing vulnerably with those that right? You kind
Hmm.
of try to put on this facade that everything's fine, I've got it all figured out. And when you start seeing yourself doing that, that's a sign that, that is kind of avoidance, but that's like, I think that's one step further where it's just like, not only am I avoiding the problem, but now I'm not telling anyone else that I have a problem,
Mhm.
right? Because we almost have this sense of, if I tell someone that I'm struggling, that somehow I'm less than, I'm weak, I'm not good enough, right? We have this mental self-talk. So if we're avoiding being vulnerable and telling the truth to other people about where we're at, that I think is also another sign that you are on a slippery road.
I agree, for sure. I think those are the two biggies, but there's like
Yeah,
others, of course, but I think those are the two biggest. If you're trying to avoid and you're not seeking help, that's
support.
usually a good sign that you're on a slippery slope.
I think that's a good place to end for today, Connie. And I think next time we'll talk about, some of the steps we took and that people can take in turning this around, how to come away from seasons of chronic issues and start tackling and finding victory and changing the narrative in our lives so that we're not in these places of despair and these places of um, burnout. So, once again, thank you for joining us on the Nosa Unleashed podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.